Your WorkOS OAuth credentials are sitting in environment variables, but how do you actually wire them into a production-ready FastMCP server? We'll show you the exact configuration pattern to automatically provision WorkOS authentication. No hard-coded secrets, just clean environment-based setup that works for both local testing and cloud deployments. You'll see how a single environment variable can handle the entire provider selection, while the rest of the OAuth flow stays fully configurable. Hash WorkOS OAuth credentials, always used as defaults. FastMCP server auth WorkOS client ID equals client 01 K33Y6 GGS 7T3 OMPJQA 42Y3Q. FastMCP server auth WorkOS client secret equals your client secret. FastMCP server auth WorkOS AuthKit domain equals https://your app AuthKit app. FastMCP server auth WorkOS base URL equals https://your server com. FastMCP server auth WorkOS required scopes equals open-eyed profile email. Hash optional. Automatically provision WorkOS auth for all servers. FastMCP server auth equals FastMCP server auth providers WorkOS provider. This demonstrates the OAuth proxy pattern for server authentication, where WorkOS acts as the identity provider while FastMCP maintains control over tool execution. The pattern delegates authentication to a specialized service, allowing your server to focus on business logic rather than identity management. What makes this distinctive is the clean separation between authentication flow and application logic, with the proxy handling token exchange and validation transparently. The approach works by intercepting unauthenticated requests and redirecting them to WorkOS for authorization. Once authenticated, WorkOS returns an access token that FastMCP validates against the configured scopes, establishing a trusted session. This design follows the principle of externalized authentication, where your server never handles credentials directly, only verifies tokens issued by a trusted provider. This pattern solves the problem of implementing secure authentication without embedding identity logic in your application. It's particularly valuable for microservices, API gateways, or any system needing enterprise-grade auth without the complexity. The trade-off is reliance on WorkOS's availability, but this is mitigated by the provider's SLA and the ability to swap authentication backends without changing your core application code. Let's break it down line by line. Hash WorkOS OAuth credentials, always used as defaults. FastMCP server auth WorkOS client ID equals client 01 K33Y6 GGS 7T3 OMPJQA 42Y3Q. This sets the WorkOS OAuth client ID, a required credential for OAuth 2 authentication flows. Without this identifier, the server can't initiate authentication requests or validate responses from WorkOS's identity provider. FastMCP server auth WorkOS client secret equals your client secret. This is the OAuth client secret for WorkOS authentication. It verifies your server's identity when exchanging authorization codes for access tokens, preventing unauthorized access to your OAuth flow. Never commit the real secret to version control, use environment variables, or secrets management in production. FastMCP server auth WorkOS AuthKit domain equals https://your app AuthKit app. This defines your WorkOS AuthKit domain, the dedicated authentication endpoint for your application. WorkOS routes all authentication requests through this domain, handling OAuth flows and identity verification. Required for WorkOS integration, this must match your AuthKit configuration in the WorkOS dashboard. FastMCP server auth WorkOS base URL equals https://your server com. This defines the base URL for your WorkOS OAuth callback handler. It ensures WorkOS redirects users back to your server after authentication, completing the OAuth flow. Without this, authentication would fail with no valid return endpoint.
FastMCP server auth WorkOS required scopes equals open-eyed. Profile. Email.
This defines the OAuth scopes required for WorkOS authentication, specifying exactly what user data your application needs. The open-eyed scope enables authentication, while profile and email grant access to basic user identity information. This follows the principle of least privilege, ensuring you only request necessary permissions.
Hash optional. Automatically provision WorkOS auth for all servers. FastMCP server auth equals FastMCP server auth providers WorkOS provider.
This enables WorkOS authentication as the default provider for all FastMCP servers. By setting this single configuration, you eliminate manual auth setup per server, enforcing consistent OAuth across your deployment. The pattern follows FastMCP's provider system for pluggable authentication backends. WorkOS OAuth integration. This pattern demonstrates FastMCP's provider-based authentication system, where environment variables configure the WorkOS OAuth flow, while the server code remains clean and declarative. The redirect path must match exactly what's configured in your WorkOS OAuth application settings, including trailing slashes. Environment variables act as both configuration and documentation, making deployments more maintainable.
The server that knows no secrets becomes the keeper of all identities.